At the bottom line, we all want the same thing, which is we want a system that is fair and equitable that keeps our communities safe. It's just in the middle that we struggle a little bit with figuring out what do the contours of that look like.
To watch the narrative depart from the factual basis that we all hope it would rest on has been a challenge professionally.
What is bail? By definition, bail discriminates against the poor. You're asking people to pay for their freedom. For every New York Post headline about someone who did something awful or is accused of doing something awful, there's dozens of more who have more stable lives because of what we've done, who are home with their families, who get to keep their jobs while they're going through the system. And that ultimately makes us all safer.
I think bail reform was a terrible mistake. And I think it was based on a bunch of false assumptions.
When this legislation was formed, they should have brought in right-minded law enforcement people to at least give an idea of what was necessary or the pieces that should have been mentioned or put in to fix things.
The goal of bail reform is now and always has been to reduce the number of people who are held pre-trial in this state. By that standard, bail reform has worked and is working.
Every serious study has indicated that there's no connection between bail reform and the rising crime because crime has been rising all across the country.
I think one thing that journalists need to do more is put into context the ways in which pretrial detention can drive crime up.
No evidence that bail reform is linked to increases in violent crimes. There has been an uptick. We should be taking that seriously instead of using bail reform as the reason for why this is happening.
When you get such transformational policy, well-intended as I'm sure they were, there are no directions that come with it. And in this instance, neither was there any funding.
First and foremost, we talk about data and numbers and the intent of the law, and behind every number is a person, with needs, with their own story, who's tied to community, with family.
So at a constitutional level, it means that we've sort of fundamentally violated their presumption of innocence, that arraignments last 30 seconds or a minute, there is no finding of guilt, and this person is then behind bars, either on bail they cannot afford, or in cases where they've been remanded.
One system, it's one bail law, and it's two realities. And so what the original bail reform was about was trying to create a more equitable system. A system where somebody isn't held in on bail because they can't make $500 bail.
When is the state entitled to deprive somebody of liberty? On what basis, and then in what conditions should they be held while they're awaiting trial? This is not a new question. Let's remember the Constitution. Let's remember the values implied in that Constitution. Let's remember due process. Let's remember the presumption of innocence. Let's remember the prohibition against, guess what, excessive bail. Let's remember the guarantee of a speedy trial. So the language that we can use that I think helps us find common ground with others is the language of defending our Constitution.